Hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily TA wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we ask ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming ones. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Archived on YouTube, it's under the channel L.A. Little. You can catch me there, anywhere, any device, anywhere you're at, anytime. So markets, let's take a look at what happened today. We've been on this little bounce. The bounce started in earnest on Thursday. We came off those lows Wednesday, kind of washed out. Thursday did a little bit of a retest and then bounced. Friday got the big move up. We talked about that last night and expected some continuation probably today, maybe even tomorrow. And that's what we got today. We got continuation. We got it in a big way, actually. NDX was the leader, 54.6 points higher, 3870, 1.4%. The laggard here was the industrials, just barely up on the day. Good gains around everywhere else with the exception of that. That was all about IBM and earnings reports there, knocking that one down. If you look elsewhere, gold up, the dollar was down, and oil is pretty much flat actually. Natural gas down again. Bonds up, and that's pretty much a good picture of it. So, I don't know that there's all that much to talk about in terms of these indexes. And what I mean by that is that these things are coming right back up into that area that you would have expected them to come back up into, and that is the retest regenerate zones. And so if we draw that out, you can see here today, this low, 1904.78, where did we get to? 1905.03, so we come into it, right? The bars that we're coming into, these two bars, let me circle them here. These two bars, that intersection there is a tough spot to get back over because that is what? That's the breakdown area. And so as you come back up, you test into it, you have a lot less volume comparatively. What's this thing going to do? Well, it's probably going to flip around and come back down and do some testing. Now, where could it come back to? Well, if you think about what you see here, that little intersection right there looks pretty interesting, doesn't it? You got your high volume. You get the high of the high volume low at that price point. You also have the other side of this bar that we're talking about now. That intersection down there, I would expect, is where this thing's going to try to come back to. And so if I'm looking at resistance and support at this point, I'm looking at this area, this retest regen here that's taking place, the tops and bottoms of these bars, tops and bottoms of those bars on some sort of a retrace. What will that set up? Well, potentially that's going to set up some sort of ABCD structure to the upside to try to get back up into this breakdown bar up here. Now that's assuming that this is going to be a large range trade, and if that's the case, then you would expect it to broaden the range. Now the other side of this is, well, what if it comes back down and it doesn't stop here and it gets deeper? Right? So maybe you get down into here or something. If you get into this bar too deep, this big wide price spread bar, usually that means you're going to try to test it. So that's the risk on the way back. And so what you want to know is, where do you look and where do you expect support to come in? It's here. If it doesn't, and if it doesn't come in pretty quickly right after that, then you got to start thinking about this end of it again. And that's a long way down from where we're at. That's the S&P 500. I expect it's going to come back into this area and it's going to find buyers there, because if I'm a buyer, that's my low risk area. That's where I should buy. If I'm a seller, this is my low risk sell right now. So, given those two things, what do you think is going to happen? Well, more than likely the sellers are going to step up here and dump a little inventory. Dow Jones. If we look at the Dow's a little bit different in that it's a bit stronger, or at least it was coming into the day. But then IBM kind of knocked it for a loop today and it couldn't get going. It's coming in doing a retest regen. If we look at the NASDAQ, so the broad composite, it pushes higher, lower volumes, coming into its swing point low, doing a retest, regen off that low. If we look at the NDX, NDX doing the same sort of thing. So, as you look at all these indexes, they're all basically doing exactly what you would think. And you can even carry that farther if you look at the Russell, because remember now, the Russell is our canary that's been singing down, down, down. What does the Russell do? It comes up, tries to get into the tops of these two bars, finds resistance there. Let me circle them up. These guys here, that's, this whole congestion area is where it came into. Finds resistance there, pulls back, and now it's coming back up to try to test this area one more time. Now, this is an interesting one to watch because the retest regen is higher on the daily. On the weekly, it's already into that area and it's already doing an immediate retest regen off of those multiple swing point breaks. And why I say this is interesting is because if you think about what you see here, and you now have the potential for an ABCD structure to the upside. So if this gets over the high and starts pushing up into here, it's going to get extremely interesting because if I'm bearish, I want to be a seller into this area probably, not only here but on the weekly. But at the same time, you're setting up ABCD bullish ABCD structures, which one's going to win out. And so this is going to probably be, once again, the one that probably tells us something in terms of the indexes. So that's the indexes. If I look over at the sectors, you actually got some strength in some of these sectors today, which suggest what we were talking about last night, and that is that we're probably going to see some sort of range trade, larger range trade start to develop after some sort of a little push up and then retrace, and that's kind of what we were just looking at on the indexes. So I'm not going to point every one of these out, but if you do these and you look for the swing point lows, these retest regens so far haven't regenerated lower. Now, all of these tonight that I'm going to call out barely are over it. You really need 2 bars, maybe 3, right, to really make you feel comfortable. But, you've had a nice, long, straight move up. You just got over the top of it. If it can't hold it tomorrow, it kind of says, okay, yeah, so it tested it and did actually fell. So you're right on the verge, and there's 5 of these. Actually 4 of them on the verge. One of them, of course, IBB, the one we just looked at. Another one is the transportation index, the IYT. You can see it pushing. It actually got over the low pretty well today, so I believe that one has definitely moved into a range trade. The XLF barely got over the top today, so it gets over this swing point low, just over it, just barely. So that one, again, will be one that you want to see tomorrow continue on up or not. XLI is another one coming into the swing point low. It's right on the verge. And then the other one that really did strong, just like the IYT, is the XLP. Of course, this is a safety play as well. So 2 of the sectors really do look like a range trade. The other 3, those are debatable. You need another bar or 2. The rest of them, nothing's happened yet. They're just slowly trying to make their way back up. And, an example of it may be maybe look at the XLK, for example. It's trying to crawl back up to that swing point low. So mixed picture there, kind of jives with what we're saying elsewhere in that, we've got the bounce, expect some sort of a retrace, and probably expect that retrace to hold and some more bounce and some retrace, range trade, large range trade at that. If we look at the world markets, they're pretty much the same thing. There's really no sign of lift there. And if I look at the OX markets, I don't see anything there that's interesting either, nothing notable. So when I put it together with what information we have as of tonight, it looks to me like you're going to get a retrace tomorrow, and that probably, I don't know how long it's going to take, but that's probably going to find some support down a little bit lower, like we were looking at the S&P 500, and then another bounce. And that kind of fits in also with the fundies that are going on, and that is that you've got earnings out there. It's going to gyrate this market, and we're going to look at some earnings here later. Apple was big today. At the end of the day, IBM was big this morning. So we'll take a look at some of those earnings and start trying to dissect some of those to see what they're telling us, if anything. Speaking of the fundies, the fundamentals, Japan, I want to pop over to the world markets right quick. So Japan, if you remember, Japan broke down. And this is what I'm talking about with these range trades on the indexes. If we come over and look at Japan, remember last week Japan on Friday broke down underneath the swing point low. We thought it would test it again, but it actually broke under it, had heavier volume, looked like a breakaway. But remember how we always say, time is extremely important from a neoclassical perspective. I don't ignore time. And when I get a straight move like this off of what essentially was an ABCD structure that's extremely overextended into a swing point low, right, that had high volume on it. I believe we did higher volume here. Let me make certain of that. 177, yeah, just barely. So we did a little bit higher volume. Folks, that's hard to keep going down. And not only that, if you look over at the weekly, it's the same thing, right? You've had an extreme stretch. You just broke the swing point low. Now you're trying to get the bounce back up today. And what was that off of? Well, it's always interesting how these things shape up. All of a sudden you get news that, oh, we're going to put a bunch more money into the pension funds, from the pension funds into stocks. Oh, hello, let's rally the stocks. You also had the ECB start purchasing paper today. You've got the Fed meeting next week. Folks, it's about central bankers. It's about government entities or quasi-government entities that are going to do everything that they can to keep these markets going. It was that way in 2007, 2008. It was that way in 2000. It's always that way, right? The Asian scare back in 1997. I mean, just go down. It's always that way. Now, of course, they're doing it for our benefit, right? They don't want to see us hurt. Yeah, they want to bail out the big bankers most of the time, or they want to bail out the big, the big money. It's not me and you. Yeah, I mean, we would get hurt too, but I think our small pittance is a lot less than theirs. So, I mean, one can argue that it has to be done. Well, yeah, maybe it does, but when you create your own problem and then you fix it, I don't think you should be a hero, I guess is the way I would put it. All right, let's, I don't have any viewer questions tonight. Just to remind you, if you have questions for me, I'm more than happy to look at them. I think it makes for a better show. You can pop in here, come to NeoTA TV, and this is on the TA Today site. And then right down here, there's some information about how to send those messages to me, and I'll try to answer them for you. Let's go and look at some of the earnings that played out today and see if we can make anything of these. So let's start with the ones that were this morning. Halliburton, this is in the energy sector. And actually, I thought that they were going to trade up pretty good today, but I guess they're not. Up a little bit, but not that much really. 2.79%. This isn't going anywhere. So energy sector, even on what were reported as very good earnings, doesn't seem to care. NCR, which is National Cash Register, it's a little bit broader than what it sounds like. It's really not just a cash register machine anymore. It's more broad, computers in general. These guys are hit hard. Let's see what the weekly looks like. Big breaks everywhere. This is in tough shape. And volume expanding. Folks, this is coming all the way back to 14. It's at 24. Don't touch this thing. Let's look at the next one. So that's and one of the things I do, because I look at the post earnings on a daily basis, is to see, what kind of sectors are or aren't getting hurt. And so, here we just did an oil's name. Now we did a computer name. The next one is a coal name. Now these were trying, but I don't know what I'm thinking of there, huh? BTU. Let's go the other way. These guys were trying to make a bounce. The sector itself, earnings not good here, going down to test the lows again. So I don't think coal's done with its pain yet. Let's look at media, GCI, Garnet. And that's a decent bounce today. Let's see what the weekly looks like. Yeah, this one actually can get a bounce finally. So this one, notice how these set up, and it was set up for a bounce. You got volume at the highs. That's good. You're coming into a nice big bar right here. You test into it. What kind of volume you got? You don't have the same volume. That should give you a bounce. You're actually tested into 3 different areas there. So yeah, that sets up for a bounce, and I suspect this one can bounce back up to $30 pretty easy. Test that breakdown bar for sure. And if it gets past it, you can go test the bottom of that one. This breakdown and bottom of that. So Garnet looks okay. So media, not too bad. Let's look at the next one here, or at least this media stock. We'll have to see a few more. IBM. This company is worthless. I mean, I was writing bad things about them 3 years ago, and they haven't gotten any different. So you break 3 swing point lows on a weekly as of today if it holds. The daily is going to look horrible, and huge volume, big spike down. Let's see what the monthly looks like. Breaks the swing point low. It's probably going to have volume. This one's going to come all the way back to about 157, it looks like. So IBM's still in the doghouse. TSO, another oil and gas. Let's see what this one looks like. And so you can see on the monthly it's up at near the highs. On the weekly, nice big spike today. This one looks pretty good. You're going to go test the highs again. Got volume. This one doesn't look bad at all. So you got one oil stock or oil sector stock doing well, another not. And I think this one is oil and gas exploration, if I remember right. Halliburton's more about servicing those companies more so than the drilling, although they do both. Another one, here's a retailer, apparel, VFC. That one's not going anywhere either, probably. Yeah, that one's just hanging at the high, so nothing special there. And then we got some after hours here. Let's see what these did today and see what they closed at after hours. So Texas Instruments had a gap down just like the stocks. They reported some good earnings after the bell. Closes at 45 after hours. That we can get back up and retest regen. Let's see. Apple, of course, was after the bell. Apple was up on earnings. Traded as high as about 101. Apple's maybe going to trade back up to this 103, but I still don't see Apple going anywhere. We'll watch Apple tomorrow because Apple, if Apple can't get up and over, then it's still in this range. We've talked about this range before. I actually did a video on it, one short take morning video. This one looks like it's still a range trade. It got down here, spiking up. It's going to go up and try to test the top of the range. Now, note, it's got 4 swing point highs up there. So, when this thing finally breaks higher, or what's going to happen now is you're going to have 3 swing point lows down here. When it breaks lower, it's going to make a major move one way or the other. So it's going to be one to watch. It just doesn't look like it's ready. It looks like the market. It's in a range trade. So, in general here, I'm looking to see if there's any other ones that are interesting. Let's look at Chipotle. They came out after hours. Now this had already broken some swing point lows, and they were down after hours, and they had that big spike up on the last one. This looks like it could come back into that area and test 588 to 582. And it's trading at 625 after hours, down 2.5%. So this also will be a big tell. Now, this also has a swing point high here that hasn't been tested. So that would be a retest regen, but if you notice, that takes it right back down if it does a full one to the lows. Now, it's way more than 6 bars. So that high should get a bounce to start with, 623. I would think that's the first place to look tomorrow. There are some others, but that, I want to do the steel stock, STLD. Where did this one close after hours? It was trading up 2150 after hours. So that really is not doing anything. That's interesting. That's a good looking trade. Looks like it should trade higher. I'd like to see, if I'm in the steel sector or wanting to be, I'd like to see it trade over 22. All right, that's my take tonight. We'll see how it plays out. Even with these Apple earnings, I think it's going to be tough to get up and keep going higher after the run we've already had off the bottom. I mean, folks, these are not small runs anymore. If we go back and look at, just pull up the NDX right quick, that low was 3,700. We're at 3,872. We're up almost 200 off the low in 3 nights. That's a long way in a short period of time. You're going to see this thing retrace. Have yourself a great night. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.